Well, Todd, thanks for joining me. I know I reached out kind of last minute here, but last night we're in the second round of the GHSA playoffs. I had a pretty exciting game that I wanted to talk through because we had a lot happen, and I thought a lot that would be beneficial for people to learn about and give feedback on. So I wanted to bring you on to talk about that. For those that haven't seen Todd or haven't met him yet, Todd actually, what's your title with United?
I'm the president of United Travel.
Awesome. Yeah. So high involvement. Todd, like me, you have a professional baseball background. Have done a lot at the collegiate and obviously the high school level. And Todd very recently took over, was just elected. He's president elect to lead our high school association, Marietta Umpires. So Todd, thanks for joining me. We're gonna have this is a long discussion. I mean, I had a 40-minute post game with my partners after the game yesterday because we had a lot happen, a lot of interesting things. So we'll go through it. Disclaimer to everyone out there: I'm going to change the names of the teams and the umpires and the coaches. Not that you couldn't go back and figure out who it was, but it's really not relevant necessarily that you do know who it was or be able to go. From what I've found, I have not found any video of it, but these umpires, they know we're going to talk about it, and there's nothing bad they did. We're not going to be hounding on them, but these are all learning points that everyone can learn from, myself included. And the more we learn from other people's actions and things on the field, just better that we learn from somebody else versus having to experience ourselves. So, Todd, anything you want to say before we get started?
No, I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be interesting to see how what your perspective is, and then give you my opinion on it. So let's get
All right.
started.
All right. So, for context, we've got these are two teams playing at one of the highest levels of GHSA baseball. We're going to refer to them as favorite and underdog. This is the second round of the postseason. So favorite's going to be, we're playing at favorite for all three games. We play doubleheader day one, and then if they split that, play a single game on day two. So, and then a little more context, favorite, the home team, they're in the third base dugout. The visitors are in the first base dugout. I'm the crew chief on the field. Todd knows the real names of the umpires, but we're going to refer to them as Jamie, who is working first and will work the plate in game two, and Jeff, who's working third and will work first base in game two. So there's kind of laying out the picture for you. But, so I'm a crew chief. We get there 2 hours before game time. The day before, I'm emailing with the home team just to confirm details about game time, logistics. Are we going to have food in the locker room? Will we have our locker room secured? All that stuff. And some context to add is that I've had the favorite team, the home team, maybe like 4 or 5 times in the last 3 weeks of the regular season. So pretty familiar to them, have had a good relationship with their coach. Funny enough, he told me earlier in the year, Todd, he's like, Patrick, you're pretty good. Like, maybe I'll have to reach out to Michael and tell him that you should be working the second round. I was like, thanks.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate that. But anyway, so first game, when I'm crew chief, I like to work that game on the plate. I like that I can kind of I get to run the plate meeting, lay out that experience, and hopefully, set a standard for how the game's going to be officiated and how the series will be officiated. So I like to do game one on the plate, and then game two, work the bases, and we'll get into why I feel that's important and why it ended up being important. But throughout the game, it started with the first pitch, actually. First pitch, I balled it on the outside, and Evan for the home team, he yells out, "Patrick, where's that pitch?" I'm like, "It's outside." And so from pitch one, he was just kind of chirping a little bit. You could tell he was a little maybe nervous, especially after their previous round, how that had gone. but things are moving fairly smoothly. And then in like the third or fourth inning, with a left-handed batter and a runner on first, we have a check swing. I say no, he didn't go. The favorite team asked for me to get help, and I go down to Jeff at with the runner on first. He was our third base umpire. He's in deep B, so on a left-handed batter, it's a pretty hard check swing to see. And like I said, I didn't think he went, but I go down to him, and he comes up. Yes, he did. And Tom, for the underdog who's coaching third base, he just like kind of loses it on it. Gets frustrated and upset. And we talked in our pregame, in a postseason series, we're trying to avoid ejections. We're trying to keep everybody in the game. Tensions are high, but we need to be able to keep them in. So he starts getting frustrated. And, next pitch happens, ball it, and Tom from the third base coach's box says, should be 2-1, but now it's 1-2, which I felt that, and tell me if you agree with this, but if we have, after that pitch, you don't get to keep arguing about check swings. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Like, at that point, we're kind of stuck. But, and, my partner, Jeff down there, so he responds back by giving a stop sign, and I couldn't hear what he said. It was a that's enough or some sort, something like that. Then the coach keeps going or whatever, and Jeff calls time and calls the whole crew in by the mound, and he gets us together and he says, yeah, this guy's frustrating me, and I'm close to ejecting him. And it was funny because, like, it wasn't the right way that I would see us wanting to handle that. And we talked about it after, like, we don't need to get together to talk about, your frustration level with them. Now, we can, don't get me wrong, you can come vent to me after the inning, and, we can strategize what we want to do. It just brought a weird amount of attention to it, though. And, I think the bigger issue was, and this is going to be a recurring theme, it's a recurring theme that I saw throughout the season, was umpires going from ignore and sitting on ignore too long, and then the first thing they do when they react to what they were ignoring is warn.
Yep.
And when you skip those steps in between, there's a lot of valuable tools there. And what happens is, if you ignore too much, you start to get emotionally kind of worked up and anxious and upset, and then you just immediately go to warn. And then you got to either enforce warn, or you've show the first time that you're not really willing to back it up. So that happens. I think we had one more check swing that I went down to him on that he got that upset the team, and then later in that game there's a slide into second base where he calls the kid out. I think the call was right, not really relevant to the story, but again, it went against the underdog team, right? So he's getting a lot of frustration out of that. Meanwhile, the underdog team has, Evan for the home team. He's chirped a couple times on balls and strikes that I've not given him strikes that he wanted. And I can, when you do that, especially a coach that you have a relationship with, that, I'm responding by, that's outside, or no, that's a good pitch, or whatnot, or you're off the plate, you're low. I'm responding, but never warning. Just responding. Let them know that they hear. That you're working with him, but that you're in control. But I think that showed to Tom with the underdog team. Oh, Patrick's not going to give in to them. He's being fair to us. He's giving us a fair thing. And so I kind of talk about, and what he will be coming into this conversation will be, depositing or withdrawing from your relationship with people on the field. So, going into the game, I've worked with the home team quite a bit. They have enjoyed having me. The coach has told me he likes me. I've deposited into that relationship before this game. We're not supposed to game. It's supposed to be fresh game to game, but you build those relationships. You build that credibility over time. And so I've got that with the home team. The underdog team, they saw me once earlier in the year for a doubleheader, had some deposited there, but I kept building up my deposits into that account by having a good game on the plate, good game management, things like that. Meanwhile, Jeff, he's been maybe not even wrongfully, not missing calls necessarily, but he's been withdrawing a little bit from that bank account, right? Every time, you get that coach worked up a little bit, he gets a little more upset. So that's game one. We get out of it fairly unscathed. Go back to the locker room, come back out 40 minutes later, start.
So let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Matthew. So let's talk about when y'all got together on when your partner was frustrated. What did you do there in that crew consultation, and what did y'all talk about there to try and get the mindset of the crew reset?
Yeah. So he brings us together, and I mean I knew what he was going to call us, what he was calling us together for. I told him in the moment. I told him, look, if you're annoyed with him, I get it. I'm not sure what we could do getting together here that it's a great look for us. Now, there's a possibility that it did get the message across to Tom that they're starting to get worked up about me. I should probably watch where I'm stepping here. And I just told him, like, go back at, bark back at him, but don't bark back with warnings, right? We don't, these are balls and strike arguments. And in a regular season game, you could dump them pretty easily, but we're trying to work with the coaches here. And they were tough calls that I wouldn't have gotten from Deep B. I didn't think he swung anyways, but not really relevant to the point, but trying to give that leash, right? So that's kind of what we talked about.
Okay. And so you didn't feel like there was any need to come with a warning at that point, offer a ball strike warning at that point from the crew?
No, I mean, I especially, we're about half to 3/4 of the way through the first game of a posting doubleheader, and I'm trying not to draw lines in the sand that we're going to have to enforce.
Sure. That's fair. I get that. So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on and so y'all go into the locker room. What was kind of the temperature of the crew in the locker room after the first game?
I could tell that Jeff was frustrated, and maybe you could say rattled. You could just kind of see, like, the comfort was, he was thrown off, right? I got the crew together and I explained, like, and this is what I talked about in our pregame, actually, was we need to, when you're trying to keep people in the game, when you're trying to not have ejections, but you still need to maintain control, you have to be assertive in the right way. And I told my crew, you got to be ready to bark back. And that was a recurring theme in my season. A college game I struggled with early in the year. Letting ignore go too long, but instead of just respond back and bark back at them, and it does a pretty good job of getting them to bring it down a little bit. Just letting them know that you're hearing them, and we're not going to do this all day. So that's what I talked about back with the crew was, I wanted to, come back at them. You're confident in your call. You explained it to me in a way that sounded pretty confident. Just come back at them with it. And
to that point, Patrick, I think, in those situations, the verbiage that we use is so important there. If we're going to respond to them outside of, giving them a stop sign and telling them, hey, we're not going to do this. If we're going to bark back, it's got to be something of, something like in that case scenario, hey, they asked for help. He got help. We got it right. Something like that. acknowledging, let him know that you're hearing, and let him know that you've got the confidence that, hey, we got it right. Especially if he felt that confident about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, come back at him. Show him that you're aggressive. And I forgot to add in game 1 too. We had a kid for favorite hit a bomb over the left field fence. I mean a freaking bomb, right? And I'm looking over that way, and I see out of the corner of my eye, I see a bat go up in the air and come down. We don't have as strict of an enforcement on that in high school as it's the issue at the college level that you and I both know.
Sure.
So he comes around to home, and I wanted to make everyone at the crowd at the game know I don't want to keep dealing with this. This isn't acceptable. But I think like the verbal warning can be such a weak move to be like, that's your warning. Just when you say that, like, so he comes around to home, and they're gonna go over there and do the jump thing or whatever nonsense with the players. But instead of letting him do that, I stopped him after he touched the plate, and got about a foot from his face and said, "We're not gonna do that today. I'm not gonna have this. You flip that bat up in the air. We're not gonna do that." And he pretty quickly apologized. I won't do it again. All that. And then, he went back to the dugout. They did their thing, whatnot, went in. But what I thought was a good takeaway from it was that everyone at the game knew, oh, he just got warned for something. The umpire had something was not happy with what happened and had something to say to him. But at the same time, I didn't need to do some royal proclamation to the crowd. That's your warning. I obviously didn't eject, and we're trying not to eject in these games. But also, like, the kid that went and grabbed his bat to bring back to the dugout, he says, "Oh, what'd you warn him about?" And I said, "Flip the bat." And he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I saw that you got on him." And same with the coach, Evan, as they're kind of following the players, and he looks at me, and he just kind of gives like a what happened face.
Sure.
I signaled, chuck the bat, and he goes, "Okay, I gotcha." But I thought it was a good way to, especially with a team that I've built up that relationship with, let them know, don't be bringing this crap into my game.
Right.
I mean, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think one of the hard parts with the bat flip, and I know I'm fortunate enough I get to listen to some really smart people at the college level talk about it. And one of the things that we as umpires have got to do is make sure that we're keeping an eye on that batter. I mean, I know the ballpark you're talking about, it's somewhat short, so he got it up in the air and it came off the bat quick. There's no doubt it's going out of the ballpark. And you got a partner probably with his eyes on the baseball. That's when we as the plate umpire need to get back to the batter and make sure that we're seeing him, what he's doing with the bat. And, look, the hard part of all of this for the umpire is these guys are excited. There's true emotion there. And, one of the things that one of the guys at college level talked about was, try and let them have that emotion. And if it's true emotion and they just hit this huge home run and a huge moment, then let them have it, as long as the other team is not reacting to it. And I think that's very important, especially at the high school level. If he stands and looks at it, he flips the bat a little bit, from true emotion and then runs, I think we've got a truly a student athlete, celebrating his accomplishments. If he turns and looks at the other dugout, mouths something, throws the bat 40 feet in the air, I think those are two different situations. But the big thing for us as umpires, we need to make sure that somebody's got eyes on that kid that first 10 feet before the ball, or before the bat goes flying up in the air, and what he's done before that. So
Yeah, yeah, and it sucks because you see on social media, like you'll always see people like getting on college umpires about it, and like they're the videos only usually come from like umpires at the SEC and ACC, which are probably maybe other than pro ball, the best umpires out there, and definitely following the orders of their bosses. So, but people don't understand that.
well, there's just so much more that can happen because once again, there's emotion tied into this, and you get a bat flip. The other team, react poorly to it. Now they're emotional about it, and then and if we don't address it as umpires, potentially it brings up the next situation, which potentially is a throwing situation, or somebody jawing back and forth at the dugouts, and it just puts us in a situation that is going to be hard to handle if we don't address it immediately.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to shut down. At least was like, was the bat flip wasn't terrible, it wasn't egregious, but trying to get across in the way that I did to everybody, that's not acceptable, and we're not going to let this spiral out of control.
Right.
Hopefully. I will say that game also ended with with a batter for underdog getting called out for bunting a ball down, taking a step out of the box, and then running into the batted ball, which just, again, it was the right call, and I don't think they didn't argue it, but just another little call, right? That a weird play that goes against underdog team.
Sure. It sounds like the underdogs just they didn't have everything going in their direction for them.
No, and to win this game, they were going to need that. But
Sure.
so let's get to game two. Oh, sorry, one more. Game one. I know. Game one. It just keeps adding up.
I was going to say, it just keeps coming and coming, doesn't it?
I had I called a balk that scored a run against them. They had first and third, and scored a run against underdog, and it was one of those where it takes you a half second to realize what just happened and go, oh crap, that was a balk, and then balk it and do it. It was a runner on. He did a spin move to throw to first, and then didn't throw, probably because the first baseman wasn't there. Balked it, whatever. Coach, underdog coach Tom comes out, and first thing out of his mouth was, didn't you have time? Which immediately told me, yeah, he knows what that balk was.
He knew it was a balk.
He knew it was a balk. And I was like, no, I did not have time. And he kind of gave me an argument about, like, why did your second base umpire not get it? And, like, I just said, well, Gary's looking at something else probably. He's probably looking more at the hands or whatnot. I was looking at the feet, whatever. We can kind of ignore that question.
Right.
But it's funny, like, that goes back to why it's so important that if a coach is coming out to you, don't be the first one to talk. Because you might be surprised what they come out to tell you, and what they might be wrong about. But, like, in that scenario, as soon as he came out and told me that, I knew what happened, or I knew he knew, and there wasn't going to be much argument. He just kind of wants to make a little bit of a fuss about it. And then, the next half inning, on his way back to third base, Coach Tom comes by me and he goes, yeah, I knew that was a balk. And I said, I knew you knew it was a balk because you came out and asked me if I had time, not arguing the balk.
Right. Well, and look, they got a job to do, and they got to, protect their kids and protect their players, and I get it. And that's why it's so important when they do come out for us to listen and see what their questions are. So,
yeah. Okay, so bottom of the first inning of game two, we're finally there. First of all, we had a ball, something randomly end up on the field on the first base side, deep. It was kind of loud at the game. There wasn't a pitch going on at the moment, But Jeff, our first base umpire now, I don't notice he's calling time until like 4 seconds later when the pitcher's like finally started his delivery. And we had a little bit of a conversation in the locker room after about that. But once you say time, even if nobody else hears you, we're committed to time.
Yep.
So just a note for him and for everybody was, if you're calling time and nobody's hearing you, you just keep walking or moving towards the mound, yelling time, time, time until everybody realizes you've called time. But that was one of those moments where, like, you could have seen too, where that would have just kept compounding. Bottom of the first, favorite, they're the visitors for this game. Their pitcher, they have a lefty that's doing that move where he's kind of stepping to home instead of first base. But it's the one where, and it's so funny, the higher levels of baseball, the less complaining I feel like you hear about that move, because they all know that, like, they know that he's picking off the first just by the way he picks up his leg.
Right.
That almost tells them more than anything else. But you could see that again, because Gary was the first base umpire. Jeff was the first base umpire over there. And, they're looking at him, right? He's got a good angle to see where he's stepping. He's not calling it. I was okay with him not calling it. I didn't think it was a balk. But just building up a little bit more with him. And then we kind of start to get into the chaos. We have a check swing again, right-handed this time, and Jamie goes down to Jeff at first. Did he go? Jeff says no, and of course the underdog dugout on the first base side, they get chirpy about it, right? You can't call it there, but you called it from deep B position. They're arguing about the last inning. And just kind of going on that. Then a little bit later, we have a play at first, underdog on defense, where the first baseman tries to stretch to get the ball, and Jeff calls safe off the bag. And he gave kind of a nonchalant, like, I think umpires sometimes think, if I play it cool, like it wasn't that close, then they won't come out and argue it. But that only works in some scenarios, and a playoff game is not one of those scenarios because they're fighting for their season. They're coming out on you if they want to. You're not going to play it off like that. And he should have been more assertive. Safe, he's off the bag versus what we got. And, of course, Tom comes out to ask about it and he goes to Jeff and he says, hey, he's getting on him and trying to get him to get help. And Jeff is saying, no, I saw it. I'm right on top of it. I'm not going to get help. And, I was working my way down as the crew chief. I told my crew in pregame of game one, we're going to try to pick and roll before an ejection happens because we want to try to get them back in the dugout and not deal with all this other stuff. I'm not having any ejections. So, I'm hearing them talk about it. Jeff isn't going to get help. I try to pick and roll. Jeff gets away. I get Tom kind of, complaining to me about it, right? And, he's giving you hey, he thinks he's too good to get help, all that fun stuff. You know what he's complaining about.
Sure.
Like, I'm trying to get him back into the dugout at the, end closest to first, but he wants to go back to where he was, which was by the plate, that end of the dugout. So, I have to walk him a little bit further. And right when I think I got him there, he's about 3/4 of the way to that entrance, and I peel off to start heading to third, and apparently he started to come back out. And this is where Jamie on the plate stepped in and barked back at him, hey, we're done discussing this. And I don't know his exact words, but barked back at him, we're done discussing it. You're not coming back out here. We're finished with it. And I thought he did a really good job there of understanding that, I had to go back to my position, so I had to peel off at some point. But keeping it from escalating, and that goes back to kind of what Frank talked about on the podcast many months ago. Like, just stopping them from having the conversation by telling them it's done or not letting them go out there to have that discussion. Um, and we'll get later to kind of where that ended up backfiring on us later. But I thought that was really good of him to get in there. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, 100%. I think the big question that I have for you is, why did we not just get together and get him?
So, and that's a great point, and I talked about that in the locker room after. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Uh, I talked to the crew and I said, so let's talk about what you had built with that coach, right? You know that I've had a pretty good relationship with him at the time. Jamie on the plate hasn't had any issues with him, but Jeff just, and this happens sometimes. The baseball gods just give you all close plays, and they all go against that team, and they're pissed at you. They just are, and you can. They don't reset the same day. They just don't. So they're still pissed. And I talked to him, and I in the post game I talked to him about it. And I said, so think about your relationship with him. Think about what's in your bank in that relationship with him. You're pretty close to empty in that bank account. You've withdrawn a lot. Just and at umpire school we teach you, if you're the first base umpire in A position, we're probably going to live and die with your call. But if we'd gotten together there to discuss that, and you just said, yeah, I'll ask and see if you had anything different. Even if you came to us at when we all got together and said, I'm not changing my call. I know I got it right. I just wanted to appease them. I think that would have been a good thing to do, because then you can rely on, then Jeff would have built up a little bit of an investment in his account by just saying, yeah, I'll get help like you asked me to. And then also when we say, yeah, we're not changing the call is correct, then instead of him wanting to go back, instead of Tom, their coach, wanting to go back and argue with Jeff, now he's going to want to, Jamie can step in and say, well, you're really going to argue with me because I saw it too, and I said he was 100% correct, and I didn't overturn his call when we got together.
Well, and I think it's a situation to where we go back to, hey, you asked us to get help. We got together and we got it right. And in these situations where you said in the pregame we're not trying, not ejecting anybody, and we're not working with the coaches, that's a really big thing there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I wish he had done that. Like I get why you wouldn't. But it would have built up, it would have put more in the bank than it withdrew, right? And there was nothing there to withdraw at that point. It's not like he's suddenly going to go and ask about every call at first base. But we've talked about too in the locker room that, so let you get together, we appease him on that, we get together. And let's say for some reason, because this was part of Jeff's concern was, well, what if he just then starts to come out on every play at first? And, my response to that was, Jamie did a great job on that one, and he could continue to do so. As he sees the coach coming out, just say, don't bother. Don't come out here. We're not changing that call. I got the call right. We're not getting together on this. You can't just come out on everything, right? But again, Jamie's built up that he's got more in the bank account to use on that versus what Jeff had. And that's how a crew can kind of defend themselves. Does that sound like a decent strategy to you?
Oh, absolutely. But I really think we need to remember, what the reasons we're asking for help are there. It was a pull foot. It was a swipe tag. He had him safe off the bag. That's a legitimate reason to get the crew together and get help. And if we do that, in your terms, maybe that makes a deposit with Tom of, hey, you came out here, you asked us to get help, we got help. You're probably still not happy with the outcome, but we all got together. In our minds, we got the call right, and we're going to move on from it.
Yeah. And then, you know, if he wants to complain, hey, go to Jamie, because Jamie had the same thing. And it was, and the coach was extremely frustrated at this. I mean, he was, in a regular season game, he probably walked the line pretty well of getting ejected. He might have crossed over that. But I thought we as a crew did a good job keeping him in. And, you know, like I said, he knew me from games before, and he kind of had an idea of what my role is. And he came up to me after, and like I was trying to just talk him down off the ledge a couple of times, and that was a recurring theme through the game. He came up to me and asked me about it, and he's like, "Was I in the wrong?" And you know, why is frustrating? I just sometimes telling coaches the truth. Sometimes it's not a good idea. Sometimes it can be an investment in the bank account. For lack of a better term, but I told him, look, based on if I had been in his shoes and you're that pissed at me, I would have gotten together with my crew. But we're taught at school and in training to trust our call, which is what he's doing there and what he's taught to do. So it's not like he's got a personal FU going on. It's what, you know, we kind of talk, we kind of teach, you know, have confidence in your calls. And I just straight up told Tom, like, look, if we would have gotten together, all we're going to do is uphold the call. There was no way we were going to get together and change it. I would have, and I just told him, I would have done it to appease you so that you'd see us working, but it wasn't going to change the outcome of it. But at the same time, I felt like I was giving Jeff a little bit of a defense in that, like, it's not, I wanted to make it seem like it wasn't Jeff personally, like, giving you the finger of I'm not getting help, but following pretty base level what's taught to a T and possibly a little bit to a fault. But I thought when I told Tom that and kind of kept that going in our relationship, especially as the crew chief to him, it was able to calm him down and maybe simmer it down a little bit. And any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you have to listen to those guys and give them an opportunity to talk. You know, and if he's doing it the right way, you know, that's great. We just have to be careful sometimes of how we respond to that, and make sure that we don't put our partners in a bad situation there or in a bad fight. But I think what you did, you gave him an opportunity to vent to you. Maybe it got some of it off his chest, you know. But I think here we are in game 2, and he's just had a bad day.
Yeah. And they're the underdogs, and these games are not going in their favor. They're not going to go in his favor.
Right.
The only annoying thing is that favorite team, as they have done consistently when I've seen them, by the third inning, fourth inning, you knew they were going to win the game, but they just refused to ever get to a run rule scenario. So, like, you're dragging out this kind of like slow death, which doesn't help anything either. But yeah, so we get through that. You know, things are going well. Top of the 6th inning, favorites up to bat again. And another left-handed check swing. And Jamie goes to Jeff, did he go? And Jeff goes, no, he did not. And the dugout just, again, blows up. And Jamie, as we talked about him, as I wanted him to do, and, you know, they're arguing balls and strikes, and they're arguing not only, you know, Jeff's call at first, but they're arguing the balls and strike, which is also the plate umpire's call. And Jamie barks back at him quick, which is what I wanted to see on that. You know, he didn't come up with, well, he barks back at him, which was good. Let him know you're here and kind of get them off of Jeff. Barks back at him. But unfortunately, barked back at him with the wrong words and ended up saying along the lines of, not another word, shut up. And he's pretty close to yelling that from the plate to their first base dugout, which, of course, all their fans are sitting right between there. And, you know, they react like shut up was the most offensive thing they've ever heard in their lives, which you knew they'd do that. They play guilt, they play innocent on it. But obviously, two things you should never say to a coach, probably any adult, not if you want to have a good relationship with them. Not another word is almost always going to, or has a potential of the response being that the coach looks you dead in the eyes and says, word. And then you have to decide, am I really going to eject him for saying word?
Word.
And how's that going to look in my ejection report? And then certainly don't ever tell a coach to shut up. It's almost as bad as telling him to calm down, right? Like it never does that. Any thoughts real quick on that?
I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, we can't tell someone to shut up on the field. It's just, it's not a good look. It's definitely not a good look if we're yelling at it across the field. I probably said something to a first base coach before, along those lines when we were 3 or 4 feet away. But yelling that across the field, it's definitely a tough look. One of those things where we just got to stick with knock it off. That's enough. But yeah, shut up. Shut up's an action word for sure.
Yeah. And it was the head coach that he directed it at. And you're right, an assistant coach. I'm probably willing to say a little bit more to an assistant coach. But a head coach, not a good way to keep that relationship there. And certainly, not another word. Again, that's a test phrase that and that's something that a teacher would say to a kid. But another recurring theme we've had this year a little bit was you can't talk about coaches like they're kids, even to their players, because it will get back to the coaches, and then you've got you sounding like an arrogant dick when you say something
Absolutely.
like that. So I can see that Tom, and there were 2 outs when this happened, I can see him steaming at the edge of his dugout. And he coaches third base, so he's got to go past the plate anyways. I can see him steaming, and I'm like, oh crap, he's gonna come out and just rip into Jamie. So as soon as the 3rd out happens, I sprint down to the plate, and I just head off Jamie, I head off Tom, and more or less escort him around the dirt circle, around home, and then back up to the line. And he yelled at, he bitched isn't the right word, but I let him vent at me, pretty aggressively. And I knew what Jamie said was bad as soon as he said it. And when I talked to him in the locker room, Jamie knew that was a mistake as soon as he said it.
Sure.
And he gets to vent on that one. You told him to shut up. And he's going to get to vent. But I rushed down there. I still had, and what sucked too was when he said shut up, every coin he had deposited, that was all lost.
Was gone.
It was all
Absolutely.
gone. You burnt all of it. So now I feel like I'm the only one standing there left with any coins left in the account. So, I go down there and I, kind of wear it a little bit, but I stood close enough to him that also he knew he didn't need to scream it for everybody to hear it. And everyone could see he was complaining. But he didn't, it didn't need to be big for everyone to see it. And he didn't have to, and also I was trying to make it clear to him that you can just tell me, and you don't need to feel like you need to tell it to them. If there's something that needs to be communicated, I'll get it to them later, but don't feel like you need to approach them right now. I'm more than happy to hear you. And he told me, he at the end of it, later in the game or in the last inning, he told me, hey, I appreciate you letting me vent. And so we kind of benefited from that. But the last 3 innings when we changed, I had to escort him more or less up to the third base coach's box and then kind of slow walk him back to the dugout and kind of just keep that distance. Um,
Well, and I mean, it's important. That's part of our job sometimes as the crew chief, or even just a partner that maybe has not had the issues that the other umpire on the field has. Is we got to go and try and control that coach as best as we can. And I tell a story a lot of I saw I was on the field with an umpire one night, and we were in a pretty heated argument. And he stepped in and looked at the coach and said, "Gil, talk to me. Talk to me. This is a close ball game. You need to stay in the ball game." And all of a sudden, that coach turned. All of his attention went to him. He was able to diffuse really quickly where the umpire that he was originally arguing with was on the verge of ejection. And it's one of the greatest things that I've ever seen from an umpire on the field before, many, many years ago. And it's awesome. But it's important for especially a crew chief or a partner to be able to step in and take some of the heat off of that umpire. Whether we've done something wrong or, it's just a bad situation, that's what we're out there for, is to take care of our partners.
yeah. Yeah. And I felt I was able to do that. And that's just important for people to be able to read, right? What is my relationship? What's my relationship with that coach versus my partners, given all time, given that moment, given that second that we're in. And because of that, I was able to head him off, which I think also helped my crew to, stay level headed, not get too heated, and then what's an important kind of open but important game, right? Just being able to get in there and help with that. And we made it out, in the last inning. I'm standing down there in the bottom of the seventh with him at third base, and he's, just frustrated. And I'm just telling him, like, look, I got it. You've told me. I'll handle it. You don't need to worry about it. I mean, I think it kept him from getting ejected. He probably would have gotten ejected in a regular season game. Almost certainly would have. But we were able to keep him in a playoff game where it's important. But man,
So let me ask you this question. Why is it so important to keep the coaches in a game in a playoff situation like that?
their teams do need them. The head coach especially. Also, if you can keep the head coach in check, depending on the head coach, especially I think this head coach, he's going to keep his players in check. He's one of those coaches that tells the players, I deal with the umpires, you play the game. And so, if you eject him and lose him, then the players kind of, it's free reign now, right? I thought you keep him in there, he can keep his team in line, he can keep his assistant coaches in line better than others. I mean, one of his assistant coaches was trying to argue a no-call balk. He was wrong on it, but trying to argue it. But with Tom over there in the third base coach's box, instead of him yelling at the first base umpire 5 feet from him, he's complaining across the field to Tom that he needs to go argue it with them. And like that, the less people on that side we're dealing with, especially if we can just deal through the head coach, tends to make game management easier. But also it's important. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's important to try and keep the coach in the game all year long. I get there's a lot of emotion in the playoffs, and there's a lot of consequence if they do get it. My biggest concern, and we talked about this at the state level, is I'm concerned of us saying that to the umpires of let's be very conscious of trying to keep the coaches in the ball game, and then potentially we let things go as opposed to dealing with a situation the way it really needs to be handled. And that's my biggest concern. Um, we got great baseball in the state of Georgia, and I'm looking at the brackets right now, and there's some huge matchups coming up. And yeah, we want all the coaches to stay in the ball game, but we want all the coaches to stay in the ball game with a good attitude also. And I know it's a fine line, and it's something that's hard at every level. But I just don't want to see us as a leadership put the umpires in a bad situation because we're talking about trying to keep them in the ball game.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great point. And I'd say for context of this game, he wasn't like, it's not like he was swearing at us, but he was upset, and he was walking the line. It was tough. I felt like we could keep him in without losing control. I think it did help us actually keep control to a degree because we kept him in. But you're right, and that is important. And I don't want people to interpret this the wrong way. We're not anti-ejection by any means. You've got to be able to lay down the law. And I think a lot of that comes even more important in the regular season if you set the tone for how the season should go. And then one, it's somewhat in place for the playoffs, but also two, then we can give a little more grace in the playoffs.
Well, and to your point, yeah, he's frustrated, but you understand why he's frustrated, and he's working with you. You eject him, you have no idea what's coming out of the dugout next. It might be an assistant coach or AV coach in some sense that potentially has never been in that situation. And, then we get in a really bad place of him shooting off and us potentially having to eject him, and then there not being another coach in the dugout. So I appreciate that y'all are trying to keep him in. I appreciate that it's kind of I'd rather deal with the evil I know than the one that I don't thing also. So I just thought that was an important point for you to touch on of why that was the mindset going into the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, the one just makes a difference. But we kept him in the game. I will say there were two other kind of interesting scenarios we had from the game that I did want to talk with you about. First was a runner on first for underdog batting. The lefty makes that borderline pickoff move to first. R1 took off for second. They throw to second. The throw gets past the shortstop into the outfield. R1 gets up quickly, starts running to third. Immediately, runs into the shortstop, kind of bounces off of him, and then keeps going. Everyone's yelling obstruction. I point and call obstruction. He's tagged out at third. It's like you're teaching obstruction at umpire school. He gets tagged out at third. Time, I've got obstruction, third base. Immediately, though, knowing it's a playoff game, and pretty much anytime you call obstruction, you're going to get a conversation with the coach. So immediately, I looked into Favorite's dugout for Evan, Coach Evan, and I could see him starting to come out to me. He's going to the back of the dugout to then come out and come to me. And I'm saying to him, I didn't miss it. It was definitely obstruction. It was 100% there. And, I think coming at him a little bit with that, like, assertiveness of, like, I'm confident in my call, was able to get kind of across to him, like, yeah, don't come out here. It ain't gonna go your way if you come out here. It ain't gonna do you anything good. And it ended up getting one of his assistant coaches actually stopped him, seeing him coming out, and said, hey, you got it. Well, yeah, you got it. You got it right. It was obstruction. and kept him in and avoided a conversation there. So I thought that was something that you could use as a crew. Maybe, if you built that relationship with them, you can
Right.
say, hey, I'm 100% confident in this call. And you can, head them off before they come all the way out to you, so that then, you don't have to walk them all the way back or whatnot. Just try to meet them before they can fester and get out of control. But at the same time, be careful, right? Because that Balk I talked about earlier, I didn't want to, if I had assumed he was coming out to argue one thing, well, he came out to argue another. And then the last one was that I'll leave you with, favorite as they're pulling away in the game. They have a runner on first, one of their, top hitters, very athletic kid. Ground ball hit to the second baseman. Second baseman's in the base path. The runner makes a great stop, juke move backwards and then down to get past the tag, not leaving the base path, just incredibly athletic move to get around it. Second baseman then tries to throw to the shortstop at the bag, and the throw gets away. And the runner just decided, I'm going to be as much of a dick as I can be about this. And he points at the kid and he gives this ha ha ha, just very obnoxious, unsportsmanlike act. And again, it goes back to it probably, I don't know if it was objectionable in every instance. Not in a postseason game, probably in a regular season game. It was very obnoxious. So, and you got to lay down that we're not going to have this going in our game. So I immediately called time. I got maybe about 4 inches from his face because he's standing on second yelling at his teammates. Got to remember that that's unacceptable. We're not doing this in my game. We can't have it. It's obnoxious, ridiculous that you do something like that. And I was so frustrated, and it needed something other than just I yell warning at him, right?
Right.
So I start walking towards Favorite's dugout, and I can't even think of his name, of Tom's name, or Evan's name. I just get out. You gotta come out here. You gotta come out here. And I got him to come out to me, and I said, he's got to go. He's got to come out. He's got to come out for a bit. He can't be out here anymore. I'm not dealing with that. It's obnoxious. It's ridiculous. And I was definitely showing that I was upset by it. And Coach Evan, he's like, oh no, what'd he say? Yeah, no, I got him, and they ended up bringing him out of the game for just half an inning there. But it did make a scene to have him have to get substituted for in front of everybody. And everybody saw, they saw the play, and then they saw him get a stern talking to by the umpire, and then have to get pulled by his coach, right? And I didn't want to eject, but at the same time, I knew that I had to get across that it was unacceptable. And that's the strategy I went with. And I didn't get any complaints from Coach Evan, and you know who Coach Evan is, and he could be, he could have been, but I think he saw that it was, I think I built up that credibility with him from before. And I actually think that my kind of showing my frustration and my, I'm trying to restrain myself from ejecting this kid got the point across to him that he needed to step in and help by just pulling the kid off the field.
Right. I think maybe my verbiage there might have been, hey, Evan, that you got to take care of this or I'm going to have to. I don't know that I would have said, hey, you got to take him out of the game or whatever, but I would have made it very clear. His actions have put me in a position that if you're not going to take care of it, I'm going to have to take care of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that would have been a better way to have put it. Um, and like it's funny because there's no rule book support for that, right? We can't, but there
Correct.
is hey, you're an adult and I'm an adult, and we're running a game with children. Um, you and I have to work together to manage this game, and I'm asking you to do something before I do something, and you will not
Right.
like what I do, a lot more than what you could do.
Sure. Well, and that's the important part of it. I just think if you make that very plain of, hey, you either address this or I'm going to, and you're not going to like the way I'm going to address it. But I totally agree with you. The kid needed to get off the field there because the next pitch, something said, whatever happens, and then it blows up. We're right in the jackpot again.
Yeah, and that's it's these things they can spiral out of control, especially in a playoff game. Especially when you're in a playoff game where one team knows they're now about to get eliminated and the game ain't close, so they don't feel like they are trying to get those runs across to tie it up or win. Just the frustration keeps growing. And it kind of goes back to that home run thing I talked about. Was like you're getting something stronger in than just that's your warning, and you're letting everyone know that you're getting boiling out there. And sometimes that emotion can be useful, I think. Um, and funny enough, then the kid, so he goes out and plays center field again the next inning. And on his way back to the dugout, he comes by me and apologizes, and he says, "Yeah, I've played football for 7 years, and anytime I juke a kid out, I do that. But this isn't football, so I can't do that." I'm like, "Well, first of all, as a football official, no, you still can't be taunting on the football field. That's not allowed
Right.
either." Um, and then I also said, second of all, I've seen y'all's football record, and you should not be laughing at anybody on the field.
Well, I'm sure he appreciated that. I was thinking the same thing when you said that he played football. Well, he probably hadn't laughed at very many people all year, so
It was uh, I was proud of the little comeback I had for him there, but hey, sometimes you need to show like, and I think it actually earned me points with him honestly because it showed like,
sure.
yeah, I know what's going on at your school, I know your team, and I'm not just an old stick in the mud. I can come back. Yeah, I got a personality too.
Yeah.
And when you show that personality to a degree, and hopefully a good personality, you can end up earning more respect with the players and the coaches and everybody there. Um,
Well, and I say it a lot. I'm respect's great, and if I'm able to go out and do my job well enough to earn your respect, that's great. But I'm a whole lot more concerned about being credible. And if my personality and me maybe shooting a zinger at you on something that you said or whatever gives me just a little more credibility, a little more human, then I feel like that's the biggest thing. I don't want to go out there and just demand respect. You know, hopefully can do my job well enough to earn that respect. Um, Earning the credibility and demanding that they see your credibility, I think is really important.
yeah, yeah. How do you earn that? And sometimes you can build that up over the course of a season. Sometimes you can
Sure.
burn it down in 5 simple words. Uh,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Absolutely.
uh, um, and we saw a bunch of that. So it was a crazy series. I wanted to get that out. Recorded one with someone that I can bounce ideas off of and thoughts and get feedback from. But also, I think it's something that a lot of us can learn from. I learned from it. I was able to talk to my crew about it. I think the biggest takeaways were, we need to work on the steps between ignore and and warn, and really develop those and have those things that we're going to say have an idea of how they're going to react when I say something, right? Like, we don't tell them that pitch is high, because you do that, and then they say you're high, and I'm like, okay, we don't want to get into that. Or,
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
there's ones you can learn over time, and then there's ones you can put in your pocket and have them ready. You just got to practice that, and everyone's got to. We've all done it. We've all kicked ourselves in the foot after an argument or something and said, "Dang, I wish I said that." But you add it to.
Well, I think the important thing here, which you touched on, is that in your post game, y'all spent a large amount of time talking about how you could be better. And look, at the end of the day, you do these podcasts, you do Umpire Classroom, all to try and help umpires get better across the country. We're both on the umpire development staff here in the state of Georgia, and I work with umpires across the country. And look, at the end of the day, that's my number one goal, is for hopefully we can provide some extra training, words of encouragement that they can go out, be better, and enjoy the game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and this recording here, I think will hopefully be able to be shared as a training tool for our other members. It's a training tool for myself, and then give me an idea of what I need to teach to. And before I hang up, I'll say that we had that video that UI and Bates did on the ejection in that one game, and we got some people saying, "Oh, how could you talk like this?" and all that or whatnot, but. We'd talked to the umpire before. He knew what we were going to talk about, and we explained the importance of it, and he understood. We're educating others, but it also did tell, it showed to me that I needed to do more instruction on it, and so I did a training on ejection reports and how to do those, and then what? A couple of weeks later, there's a 16-year-old umpiring for me at the local rec park. And he tosses a coach in 10U baseball, and he says, "What do I need to do?" And I send him the video. I said, "Fill out the form on there, follow my instructions." And he sent me, Todd, this was like the perfect ejection report. It was incredible. It had all the steps. It had the rule violation, everything leading up to it. It had the coach's name, everything from a 16-year-old. And it was awesome. And so... one, I learned how to educate, from doing this kind of conversation, learned what we need to educate. And then, I was able to get a great ejection report from a 16-year-old. So hopefully that shows that we should be able to get it from everybody.
Well, I think the big thing for us is we just got to realize that we're fortunate enough that we have a platform and an opportunity to help guys get better and gals get better, umpires get better. The video that you spoke about before, I read some of the comments. Yeah, we got beat up on. We weren't taking pot shots at the umpire. I showed you we had his back through that whole situation. But we were talking through that of how we could help educate our umpires for that not to happen again. And, that situation, I talked to the umpire personally for probably an hour. And I know he had an ejection probably 3 or 4 weeks after that. And he took some of the things that we gave him and put in his toolbox, and he used them, and that ejection was a whole lot better. So I just say to everybody out there that's listening, understand that we're giving our opinion. It's not the only way something can be done, but more than anything, Patrick and I and most people that are in leadership are trying our best to give y'all the best opportunity to be successful. And I just can't stress that enough.
Yeah. And, give us that opportunity, and, it's better for everyone. Well, Todd, thank you for coming on. Thank you for letting me get this on mic and recorded, because I didn't want to forget about certain things before I put them out there in the world. But Todd, thanks for your time. I'll stop the recording here, and I'll talk to you later.
Absolutely, man.